Okay, here's a nice, very specific question that I decided to ask Perplexity about what would be the outcome of a grandiose mother forcing away the father and disciplinarian who had undiagnosed ADHD that was genetic, who also passed it to at least two of the three daughters, and none of them realized their ADHD was undiagnosed. It says likely outcome and family dynamics. A grandiose mother, often with narcissistic traits, tends to dominate emotionally, deny wrongdoing, and weaponize affection and approval. Without the father's stabilizing or empathetic influence, the daughters may internalize their worldview either through compliance, people pleasing, or rebellion. Emotionally, the home becomes unpredictable and based on image management rather than authentic support. Imagine that. Undiagnosed ADHD in the father likely caused tension between impulsivity, inconsistency, or emotional reactivity, traits a narcissistic partner would exploit or condemn. When ADHD passes genetically to daughters but goes unrecognized and untreated, it contributes to low self esteem, rejection sensitivity, emotional dysregulation, and difficulty setting boundaries. And attraction to the narcissistic men, daughters raised in such an environment often repeat trauma bonds. This, they subconsciously feel at home with narcissistic or controlling partners because that emotional volatility feels familiar. And I've seen this in even people that I, no. Anyways, identity and role confusion. They may believe love must be earned or that strength equals emotional coldness. I wonder who that would be, Mom. And let's see. Many adapt by becoming overly empathetic, caretaker driven, or fixers, taking on emotional labor in every relationship. The long term emotional costs: persistent anxiety, depression, difficulty trusting partners, feelings of guilt or confusion about disloyalty if they question their mother's behavior, a tendency to invalidate their own perceptions, and due to chronic gaslighting while growing up. Okay, ADHD awareness could be a possible, could have been a possible turning point. Diagnosis and understanding would help it. And therapy focus, reconnecting with the father story, peer groups, and education about trauma bonding and ADHD could normalize what previously felt shameful or broken. It's most definitely broken. This, let's see, when it extends over generations, both attachment behaviors and unrecognized ADHD traits shape how love, boundaries, and emotional safety are transmitted within the family. Each daughter tends to assume a specific role, adaptive role, that influences not only herself but also her children's emotional development. The roles the daughters may take: the golden child mirrors the mother's image, high achieving, perfectionistic, and emotionally detached, often represses ADHD related restlessness or emotional intensity to appear in control. As a parent, she may repeat narcissistic behaviors, valuing appearance and success above connection. Kids, the impact on her children would be kids feel valued for performance, not authenticity. So, how well they do and not how honest they are. High anxiety, possible people pleasing, or fear of failure. Some may develop ADHD related coping mechanisms like overachievement or internalized pressure. The scapegoat challenges or exposes the family dysfunction. ADHD traits like impulsivity or blunt honesty make her an easy target for blame. Often becomes the truth teller but carries deep guilt and self-doubt. She may overreact by being too permissive or emotionally enmeshed. Children could feel unsafe because boundaries blur between being a parent and a peer. Generational trauma might manifest as heightened reactivity or oppositional behavior. The invisible child withdraws to avoid conflict and becomes an emotional ghost in the household. ADHD may show up as inattentiveness or daydreaming, mistaken for laziness. Struggles to voice needs for or advocate for himself or herself in adult relationships. Impact on his or her children. Kids may grow up feeling unseen or emotionally neglected, even in a peaceful home. Possible anxiety or detachment issues. Without modeled self expression, they may internalize problems or develop passive coping styles. The emotional legacy, they inherit confusing models of love and worthiness, conditional affection, inconsistent boundaries, and emotional dysregulation. ADHD patterns like impulsivity, sensitivity, and rejection sensitivity may be misinterpreted as defiance or disrespect. See, they may either merge into roles like caretaker, achiever, or rebel, or rebel against them entirely, cycling between the two as adults. Many overadapt for approval, developing perfectionistic or fixer tendencies young. Healing often begins when one generation recognizes the pattern and reframes both ADHD and trauma responses as understandable and not shameful. Early diagnosis and trauma informed parenting can break the cycle, especially through emotional coaching, consistent structure, and validation of feelings rather than control. I wonder who doesn't validate feelings and wonder who's the controlling one. Mom. uh, it's, it's, let's see. Transformation through ADHD recognition. Emotional regulation would improve, which mine has. I've dealt with a lot of bull crap, basically. Proper diagnosis and treatment, reduce and overwhelm impulsivity. Instead of reacting to emotional chaos, a person learns to pause, communicate needs clearly, and self-soothe. I wonder, that's probably why I talk to myself a lot. This breaks the learned hypervigilance that fueled conflict and people pleasing, even though, I'd already, figured out, basically I was using the right medicine all along, but the stigma from that, which with better executive function, they can set and enforce boundaries consistently rather than impulsively or apologetically. Now, that's something somebody does way too often is they say they're sorry for things that they don't have to say sorry for. And I'm not going to say who, but they know. Let's see what's better. Executive function, they can ripple effects. Children grow up with co-regulation instead of emotional chaos. They feel permission to fail, rest, and feel without conditions attached. I've always told my daughter I support her happiness, unconditionally, and yet currently, thanks to my sister, she is, mad at me for things that are so far in the past or that didn't happen. So they are less likely to seek out power imbalanced or emotionally manipulative relationships later on in life. And the healing sibling may disrupt old roles. The others might resist at first, defending the mother to maintain the old hierarchy. Over time, visible peace and confidence of the healing sibling can inspire reevaluation of the others. It models healthy self-respect without hostility. The family narrative shifts from we're fine, stop blaming the past, to we're surviving dysfunction and now we're learning to live differently. Truth replaces denial as the emotional center of gravity. Denial. How true is that? Cycle breaking becomes self-reinforcing. Future generations grow up with emotional literacy, acceptance, neurodiversity, and healthy partnership models. ADHD awareness can evolve from stigma to a symbol of resilience. proof that sensitivity and creativity, when supported, can lead to deep emotional insight rather than disorder. And that's the intergenerational trauma, the seeking. My sister, she sought out, someone that, that was a partner that, has a lot of skills, but he, backs her up, but they constantly make fun of each other, and, it's just, she's always had it out for me. And she's also messed up her own thyroid, and she could have very well um, accidentally killed, my aunt or my granny with her ionized salt misinformation she got from Alex Jones or whatever, because she didn't take the time to actually do the research. She just thinks she's right about everything and tries all of these different homeopathic remedies, but for what? She has an opiate addiction for I don't even know how many years, but I know it's been since, her youngest was born, and they didn't even notice the symptoms in him when it was obvious. Even um, my aunt noticed that, and I'm sure my mother and dad didn't notice that whenever, notice the how easily he's angered, and the fact that he's a night owl, and he's the opposite of the other, who's just a bubbly personality and a nice person to be around. But being in a household of dysfunction is just that's the problem. All the stigma because of the undiagnosed, which my daughter's been diagnosed, but now she just says she can't get insurance when I would teach her how to do things, and while my family just sits on their butt and just blames. Mom is always blamed. My dad thinks he's right about everything, and always even Granny, Dad, even my aunt's ex-husband. They're all grandiose narcissists. They all love sports. They all want social status, and they all have used people, just like my dad used me for 20, 25 years, paying me minimum wage to, achieve his dream of owning his own business. And that, you would think a father would, try to help their son succeed, or a mother would, but they've done nothing of the sort. I've had to learn everything in life all on my own. It's probably a good thing, because if I learned from them, then I wouldn't be treating people right. But I learned, the community raised me, the church that I grew up in, and mom and dad just, he just slowly but surely isolated her. You know, like in the very beginning, he made her choose between him and her friends. And then later on in life, just a couple of years, she had maybe one friend that she talked to, and then now she has none. Nobody. So that explains that.